Hey guys, imagine for a moment that you are standing in a place long ago, in a world without electricity, without glowing screens or humming lights. The only brightness comes from the sky, and as the days of winter shorten, you can feel how the sun seems to slip away earlier and earlier. The light fades before you are ready, and suddenly everything outside turns gray, then black, far quicker than you expect. You notice how the darkness stretches out, like a heavy blanket draped across the land. By the time late afternoon arrives, the fields are already empty. Tools are put away, the roads grow silent. People hurry back indoors, because once night falls, there isn't much you can do in the open world. You can almost hear how quiet the village becomes, how every sound carries more sharply in the crisp, cold air. A cough from a distant cottage, the barking of a dog, the crunch of boots on frozen ground. Inside, the story feels different. A small home, made of stone or timber, is sealed against the chill. The door closes, and you sense a whole rhythm of life shifting into evening. You might picture yourself in that dim little space, a single room perhaps, with walls blackened by smoke from many winters before. The daylight has vanished, and now the night stretches on, long and deep. This is the time you learn to pass quietly, slowly, almost dreamily. The heart of it all is the hearth. You notice a fire already glowing, a pile of logs stacked nearby, perhaps some peat or dried brush feeding the flames. The flicker of orange and red becomes the sun indoors, the new center of life. Everyone gathers close, because beyond that circle of warmth, the cold presses against the walls. You draw near, and your eyes adjust to the low light. Shadows leap and dance on the beams above your head. Think for a moment about how much that fire meant. Without it, there was no comfort, no warmth, no safety. The flames gave not just heat, but also light. Every task, every story, every gesture you could manage after sunset depended on those flames. And so, you settle by the hearth the way people have done for centuries, leaning close to feel its breath against your skin. The nights feel endless in winter. With the sun gone, time itself seems to change shape. An hour stretches into what feels like 2, maybe more. People in those days had a different sense of patience, because there was no rushing the night. The darkness would linger until the morning came, and so you found ways to ease into it rather than fight against it. The steady crackling of wood, the smell of smoke, the dim flicker that makes the room seem both cozy and mysterious. This becomes the texture of your evenings. And with less light, your other senses sharpen. You notice the rhythm of the wind outside, pressing at the shutters. You hear the faint whistle through gaps in the roof. You can sense the closeness of family or neighbors sitting around you, their breathing, the rustle of cloth, the murmur of a voice beginning a story. In this world, without glowing bulbs and buzzing devices, every detail feels heavier, thicker, more present. There is also a strange comfort in the way night drew everyone together. During the long days of summer, work scattered people apart. Fields, markets, rivers, roads. But in the winter nights, everyone returned to the same center. The room may be small, crowded, smoky, but it is shared. Children curl up under woolen blankets. Elders rest near the fire. Men and women exchange quiet words. You feel the sense of community wrapping around you, just as firmly as the cloak around your shoulders. Yet the dark was not always gentle. There was also fear woven into it. Step outside, and the world seemed bottomless. Without a lantern or torch, the blackness swallowed everything. It was easy to believe that spirits, thieves, or hungry animals lurked beyond the edge of vision. In the quiet countryside, Imagination filled the silence. This made the hearth's glow feel even more like a shield, keeping the unknown at bay. So, as you sit in that long, dim evening, you start to sense how people pass the time. They leaned into the rhythms of slowness, accepting that night was not for rushing, but for steady, gentle tasks. The fading light shaped the mind into a softer state, drifting between waking and dreaming. You would find yourself watching the sparks drift upward in the chimney, thinking of nothing in particular, until a voice called your attention back. Even animals felt the rhythm. Chickens were long roosted, cows quiet in their stalls, dogs curled at the feet of their masters. The world seemed hushed. There was no traffic outside, no lantern-lit streets, no sound of wheels, only the breathing of winter itself, the vast stillness that pressed against the walls, reminding you that time slowed here, and that survival depended on patience. And so, the fading light of winter taught people to live differently. It set a boundary that no one could cross. You simply could not push against the night. Instead, you leaned into it and let it shape your life. It became a teacher of rhythm, a reminder of how fragile the human body is against nature's cycle. You would surrender to that rhythm, and in doing so, you found ways to make the darkness a companion instead of an enemy. Now, imagine yourself drawing closer to the fire, letting your eyes half close. The crackling logs send a soft glow across the faces around you. Outside, the world has disappeared into shadow, but in here you have warmth, light, and the slow passage of time. You settle into it, breathing with the night, allowing the darkness to carry you gently forward. The fire is steady now, breathing warmth into the room, and you find yourself leaning toward it almost without thinking. In a world where winter strips away color, the hearth becomes the one place that still glows. It is the sun transplanted indoors, flickering and alive. Every household depends on it, for without fire, there would be no cooking, no comfort, no way to chase away the cold that presses so tightly against the walls. You can see how the hearth draws everyone near. A child sits cross-legged on the floor, staring into the flames, as if watching a private play performed by sparks and shadows. A mother stirs a pot that hangs over the embers, the steam carrying scents of onion, cabbage, or salted pork. An elder leans close, hands stretched to warm the joints stiffened by frost. The hearth does not just heat the body, it gathers the family into a single circle. The glow reaches upward, painting the beams above with shifting patterns of light and smoke. The air is thick, sometimes harsh to the lungs, but it is better than the deep bite of the wind outside. Smoke curls lazily before finding its way through a narrow chimney, leaving the walls blackened over years of use. That soot is part of the home's memory, a record of countless nights spent just like this. Practical needs made the hearth central. Every meal began and ended here. Bread was baked on flat stones, stews simmered slowly, and kettles hissed softly while hanging on iron hooks. In a time before stoves or ovens as we know them, the open fire was everything. If the flames died, the house fell silent and cold. People learned to guard embers carefully, covering them at night so they could be coaxed back to life in the morning. Losing the fire meant striking new sparks with flint, a tiresome and uncertain task on bitter mornings. But beyond the practical, the hearth was symbolic. It was the heart of the household, the place where warmth, safety, and life itself seemed to pulse. Many cultures treated it with reverence. Some families whispered prayers before it, thanking the flame for its light. Superstitions warned against spitting into the fire or letting it go out entirely, for that was thought to invite misfortune. In ancient traditions, the hearth was almost sacred, and echoes of that feeling remained in medieval cottages and cabins alike. When you think about evenings spent here, you realize how much of life turned inward during these months. The firelight softened faces, made shadows dance, and encouraged stories. A grandfather might retell legends passed down through generations, his voice weaving through the crackling of the logs. Children would listen, wide-eyed, while older members nodded slowly, having heard the tale many times before, but still comforted by its rhythm. The hearth created the stage for these words, a glowing backdrop for memory itself. As the fire glows warmly at the heart of the home, the night continues to stretch on. But before anyone can sink fully into rest, there are chores that need tending. Life in a time without modern conveniences is full of these small but constant duties, and even in the deep cold of winter, you find yourself moving through them, almost without thought, because survival depends upon rhythm and habit. The animals outside must be cared for first. Imagine stepping into the night, pulling a cloak tight around your shoulders. The air bites sharply at your face, and your breath appears in white clouds as you cross the yard. A lantern swings in your hand, casting a trembling circle of light on the frozen ground. The barn looms dark and silent until you slide back the wooden door, and then you hear it. The soft shuffling of hooves, the low grunt of pigs, the muffled rustle of hay as cows shift in their stalls. Inside the barn, your movements are practical and steady. You scatter feed, break ice from a trough so the animals can drink, and fork hay into mangers. The cows lift their heads slowly, eyes catching the lantern glow. Chickens huddle together on their roosts, feathers puffed against the cold, and the dog curls at the threshold, waiting to return inside. Each task is small, but skipping it would mean hunger or sickness for the animals, and that could mean hunger for your own family. These evening chores tie your life to theirs in an unbreakable chain. When you return indoors, your hands are stiff from the cold, and the fire feels almost like a miracle as you stretch them toward it. Yet even in the warmth, more duties wait. A pot might need stirring, bread must be checked, or a kettle moved closer to the coals. Food preparation never really ends. What is eaten tonight was planned days ago, and what will be eaten tomorrow is already in the making. Perhaps meat hangs drying in the rafters, herbs are tied in bunches near the chimney, or a barrel of salted fish waits in storage. Every night, someone inspects these supplies, making sure nothing has spoiled, nothing wasted. Children, too, have tasks. The smallest may help fetch water from a bucket, or carry wood to stack beside the hearth. Older ones patch garments, scrape wax to be melted for candles, or card wool in preparation for spinning. These are not grand labors, but they keep restless hands busy. And in a world where every resource is precious, even a child's work matters. You might picture small fingers fumbling with thread in the dim firelight, the glow reflecting on their determined face. The evening also brings repairs. A shoe, worn thin from weeks of walking, may be patched with leather scraps. A broken wooden spoon is mended with careful carving. A tool dull from harvest is sharpened again, even though the fields now sleep under frost. These acts of maintenance are never urgent in the way harvesting or planting might be, but they are necessary. Winter was the season to catch up on everything that the busy months had left undone. And so, with patient focus, people filled their evenings with these humble restorations. There is a rhythm to the sounds of the household at work, the soft rasp of a knife across stone, the scrape of thread through cloth, the steady thump of logs being split outside before being brought in. Overlaying all of this is the constant, soothing, crackle of the fire. The tasks themselves may seem tedious, but together they form a music of survival, one that hums gently through the long nights. And as you watch these tasks unfold, you realize something else. The work is more than necessity. It is a way of keeping the mind steady. Winter's darkness can feel endless, pressing on the spirit as much as the body. By keeping hands busy, by mending, stirring, weaving, and repairing, people protect themselves from that heaviness. The body works, the mind drifts, and time itself slips by more easily. Of course, not all chores are indoors. Some families still send someone to fetch water from a well, even in freezing weather. The path crunches underfoot, the rope stiff with frost, and the bucket heavy when lifted. The water is shockingly cold against your skin, and yet it is precious. Back inside, it will be poured into pots, heated for washing, or saved for tomorrow's meal. These small journeys into the night remind you how fragile comfort really is, how every drop and every log must be earned. Eventually, as the tasks wind down, the room settles again into stillness. The animals are quiet, the tools are put away, and the last scraps of cloth are folded beside the work basket. The family has done what it can for the day, and now there is nothing left but to ease into the slow stretch of night. The chores were never glamorous, but without them, life would unravel. They stitch the household together, just as surely as the hands that mend the torn garments. You can almost feel the satisfaction that follows these duties. It is not joy in the modern sense, but a quieter kind of contentment. To know the animals are fed, the tools are ready, the food is safe, and the children are busy. This is enough. You sit again by the fire, shoulders heavy but calm, eyes softening in the flicker of light. The house exhales with you, and together you sink into the long night ahead.